Is this young Australian F1 driver a future world champion? Some would say yes, and perhaps with very good reason. 2023 was Oscar Piastri's rookie year, and he made quite an impact. The first time I met Oscar, Baku 2021, a friend of mine, Kim Keedle, suggested that the three of us have dinner at a restaurant called Movido, not far from Port Baku Mall. Kim's a fellow Australian. He trained Roman Grosjean for a number of years in Formula One, and when Roman left, he decided to go and work with Oscar Piastri. I get a message from Kim saying, let's have dinner, I'll introduce you to an up-and-coming driver. I must admit, I had not heard much about Oscar at that time, but I was glad to have dinner with him. And what was he like then? Very quiet, shy, happy to just sit at dinner and chat occasionally, but more interested in perhaps just listening to what was going on. Today, though, he's hot property, earmarked for greatness. So, some things you might not know about Oscar Jack Piastri from Melbourne. Born April 6, 2001 to Chris and Nicole. Dad Chris, he's quite a character, not quite in the same eclectic league as perhaps Lando Norris's dad, but still a lot of fun. Loves the fashion. I catch him in some very interesting shoes in the paddock. He rolled up to about 2/3 of the races last year, and normally accompanied by a group of friends in either the Paddock Club or the Champions Club. And what does he do? Well, he runs a successful vehicle diagnostics company in Melbourne. You'll see his logo on Oscar's helmet, and he certainly has invested plenty in his son's career to get him to this stage. Apart from Oscar's dad's sponsorship, he also has private sponsorship with Quadlock. They're the people behind these great phone covers, things like that with a wallet that comes off, and a whole host of other things. You might have seen that logo on his helmet in 2023. His mother is Nicole, and I met her for the first time in Melbourne last year. She is a delight, and on the day that I met her, she was with one of Oscar's sisters. This is Hattie. There are two other Piastri sisters. If you'd like to know when Oscar first developed his love of motorsport, I have the answer for you. It was when he was about 9 years of age, and his dad tells the story that he'd come back from a US trip with a remote-controlled car. He was driving it around the backyard, suggested to Oscar would he like to have a play. He said yes, like any young boy, took to it very quickly, and in 2010 he took out the remote-control nationals with his X-Ray T3, and that was at the age of 10, competing against adults. Whereabouts in Melbourne did he grow up? Brighton East, which is a leafy middle-class suburb. He went to the exclusive private school Haileybury. Well, that was until 2014 when he turned pro and headed to England, where he got a scholarship at the Imperial Service College as a boarding pupil. That path is very similar to Daniel Ricciardo's. He left Perth when he was a teenager to advance his career in Europe. From 2014 to 16, he focused on karting. And for the following 3 years, he raced in various open-seater championships and then had a dream run coming into Formula One, winning the Formula Renault Euro Cup Championship in 2019, the F3 Championship in 2020, and the F2 Championship in 2021. Now, there are only two other drivers to have won the F3 and F2 Championships in their rookie years. You'll know both of them, Charles Leclerc and George Russell. And now, a lot of us would have thought that winning 3 championships back to back to back would have made him a dead cert to get an F1 seat, but that didn't happen. Unable to snare a drive in F1 in 2022, he chose to bide his time as the Alpine reserve driver. However, halfway through the year, big drama. I actually made a video about his move to McLarenn. There's a link below, but if you aren't familiar with the story, let me give you a brief rundown. On July 28, Sebastian Vettel retired from Aston Martin. He did this via a social media post.
I hereby announce my retirement from Formula One by the end of the 2022 season.
Now, Seb didn't have social media until the day prior. He got it just for this announcement. Before the shockwaves had even subsided, Fernando Alonso was straight on to Lawrence Stroll. Fernando wasn't feeling the love at Alpine. He liked the deal that Lawrence put to him, and while all of the Alpine hierarchy was on a flight somewhere, he announced that he'd be leaving the team and taking Seb's seat at Aston Martin. That was a huge bombshell. Alpine then decided they'd announce Oscar Piastri as Fernando's replacement. 2 hours after that announcement, Oscar releases this statement that he would not be driving for Alpine. That was because his management had already been in talks with McLaren about replacing Daniel Ricciardo. A deal was signed with McLaren. Oscar would replace Daniel in 2023. Alpine threatened legal action, but the horse had already bolted. So here we had a rookie Australian driver replacing a beloved and experienced Aussie, causing plenty of negative comments about Oscar. To me, that criticism was highly unfair. It wasn't Oscar's job to look out for Daniel Ricciardo's. This is a very competitive world, and when you're offered the opportunity to drive for a team like McLarenn, why wouldn't you say yes? Piastri camp stayed silent throughout all that drama, and eventually the aggrieved fans found something else to get angry about. The decision to go to McLarenn has, in hindsight, proved a particularly prudent one. And hats off to his management team, Mark and Anne Webber. You'll know Mark as an ex-Red Bull driver, but he's a busy man, and going back a few years ago, he accepted the challenge of running Oscar's career when he was in F3. Does Mark go to every race? No, but he's there enough. But he has a very busy schedule. When you look at what he does, he's an ambassador for Rolex and Red Bull. He races as a Porsche ambassador, and he's an F1 commentator. So now on top of that, he adds driver manager. Let's look at his rookie year. His first race was a horror. Bahrain 2023, called in on lap 15 to change the steering wheel. The car doesn't restart. It was no fairy tale start. In fact, the first 9 or so races were pretty ordinary for him. But things picked up dramatically after that. The British Grand Prix saw him get his first real positive result, a 4th, and then it was first podium in Japan, quite a moment for him, and a second podium in Qatar, and plenty of other top finishes to end the season in 9th. His teammate Lando in 6th. Do they get on well? Yeah, at this stage. But of course, at some point, you'd expect them to be too competitive, to be too chummy. It happens to almost every pairing. Did I mention his first win? No. That was in Qatar in the sprint race. And yes, it is not a feature race, so it's a shorter, less prestigious win, but a win all the same. Midway through 2023, McLarenn realised they were on a very good thing with Oscar, so they shored up his services for another 2 years. Girlfriend-wise, does he have one? Yes, this is Lily Znaimer. I first met her in 2022 at the Melbourne Grand Prix. I've seen her at a number of other races since, and she's gradually got more and more confident. She's British, very polite, and by now she has her degree in aeronautical engineering. So what differences have I seen since I first met Oscar to now? They are numerous. One visible sign that is quite amazing is the size of his neck. This is what it looked like at the very first race last year, and this was at one of the last races. There's a huge difference. In fact, his engineering team brought that up with him, I think it was mid-year, saying, "Your neck has grown by a couple of inches," no doubt due to all the hard work he's put in and the extra forces that are involved with driving an F1 car. Another thing that was noticeable to me was at the start of the year was very quiet, particularly when dealing with the media. He's definitely come out of his shell a lot more, and now we're starting to see his personality creep in a lot more in those interviews. What Mark and Anne Webber have done, though, with Oscar is they've kept him grounded. I was photographing Mark Webber speaking at a function in Singapore last year, and he spoke candidly about having to keep a lid on things in 2023, given the huge interest in Oscar and his impressive performances. Mark also backed up what I said about Oscar, saying he's very calm, very mature, very calculating, with a big capacity for information. Is Oscar a future World Drivers' Champion? Yes. Everybody in the paddock knows that this guy is the real deal when it comes to driving. I guess he just needs the right car and an element of luck. Oscar's certainly achieved his first dream, and that is making it to F1. His second dream will be to be the World Drivers' Champion. I don't think it'll be in 2024, maybe not in 2025. He'll need a couple of years to mature, and with that maturity comes a far better chance of him standing on that top step of the World Drivers' Championship at the end of the season. You probably have to go and do something else now. So before you go, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't done so, and become a member of my channel for a whole host of extras. And here you go, some good stuff to look at when you get a moment. Thanks for watching, and stay passionate. And I now have to stop eating shit. It's just got to a stage where it's ridiculous. So.